maybe you were completely repressed as a child in terms of sexuality. Maybe you got no teaching about sexuality and it was totally tamped down. You were not allowed to talk about it, not even in an innocent way to like talk about the body or anything like that.
Right. They all had nicknames. It was all dirty.
Yeah. The little piddle diddle or whatever you talk about. Like you can't actually say the actual words and things like that.
The tinkler.
The tinkler or whatever, it's like a Batman villain.
The tinkler.
The tinkler.
Usually you see comic coming out.
Nobody resists the tinkler.
Nobody.
Who would even play the tinkler in Hollywood? Who would be the best tinkler?
Oh God. Jim Carrey yet again.
The tinkler.
The tinkler.
Hi, welcome back to the Personality Hacker Podcast. My name is Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
Welcome back once again, Christian Rivera, to
Hi.
the podcast.
Good to be here.
Yeah, Christian is INTP preferences.
Yep.
You are also involved with Personality Hacker behind the scenes, art direction, media production, video production, a bunch of creative stuff. But you also have been working with us more in live events and engagement. You're part of our new Personality Quest membership program, which meets weekly to watch the podcast together, and then members gather on Zoom to have a conversation about the podcast and apply it to our lives. And so you're part of helping with that program. We brought you on to do a short series. Well, I don't know if it's short, medium-sized series. It's a series nonetheless.
It's a chunky series.
Yeah. We're walking through Ken Wilber's framework, talking about this idea of grow up, wake up, clean up, show up. Some of these elements that he talks about. The first episode, we framed it out, kind of all those elements, just in a general, overarching way. The next episode, we talked about this idea of growing up, the maturation process, growing up, whether it's a natural process or we put attention to it. The last episode, we talked a little bit about waking up. These moments of enlightenment, of waking up to certain aspects of reality or yourself. And then this episode now, the next episode, we'll talk about showing up to your life or to other people or whatever. But in this episode, we're going to talk about cleaning up. And that's a really interesting concept, cleaning up. I always think in terms of something's dirty, if you think about the word clean. So immediately I think of a moral framework. And I'm like, oh, so I'm, it goes right back to my Judeo-Christian upbringing. It's like, oh, okay, I'm bad and wrong. I'm impure. And I need to clean up my impurities. And I think there is a little bit of a zeitgeist about this too in the world right now. I think a lot of people are attuned to this idea of purity, purity culture, purification. It's really kind of a weird, outside of a religious framework, it's kind of a weird experience for me to leave or transcend my specific religion, get out in the broader world. And now, wait, everybody's attuned to similar things. They just don't talk about it in the exact same ways, but it's a lot of the same kind of energy going on.
Right.
Is that what we're talking about when we say clean up though?
A little bit. It's having had to learn how to be disciplined throughout your life, and then later on realizing that there are certain things that you use to discipline yourself that you don't really need anymore. It's a bit of a letting go process, but it's really the assessment of like after you wake up, suddenly you're able to see a lot more than you were able to see before. It's like you could ignore that your room is dirty in quite a literal sense. And then you kind of wake up to the idea, you look around and you're like, wait, this smells weird. This is uncomfortable. Actually, it's making me feel like I can't bring my best self because this place is dirty and uncomfortable and I don't have a routine and nobody wants to come into my room or my house. And like, maybe I should start to do some cleanup work. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that desire to be completely pure and pristine. It's not like this minimalism frame of being this like hyper disciplined, which is the one extreme of it, of becoming this hyper disciplined, super pure individual who is doing such radical internal self-diagnosis of whether or not you're a good person or a bad person that you are desiring to completely remove any bad parts of yourself. That's like what a lot of religions tend to teach us is like, you need to remove impurities. And that's not really the idea. The idea is that you had to go through this process at some point in your life of becoming this, whatever the version of a reckless teenager was, to now be brought into a religion or be brought into an institution or in a job or something like that. And you had to kind of control the ego parts of yourself and become a behaved individual, not only just for society, but if you actually wanted to interface with human beings and be able to be civil with them and connect with them or earn the attention of a partner or any number of things that you wanted, you had to kind of play the game of life a little bit. And then at some point you reach this phase where you are now able to look at yourself with this grow up frame of having gone through a maturity process. You go through the grow up process of testing all of these various hubrises that you've had and suddenly developing some humility. But the humility can sometimes go a little bit too far. Again, it goes into that purity frame. Like you try to become so humble to the point where like you completely dismiss yourself and don't assert yourself at all. So what I'm trying to get to with that sort of roundabout explanation is that cleaning up is more of this like facing yourself process. It's diagnosing what your actual experience is like and starting to make better judgments for yourself as to what does it mean for me to be a good person or a bad person, and not just the external moral descriptions of it, or just being a good person by behavioral standards, by civilization standards.
So then could we use the words calibration or adjustment when we come here? Is that really what we're talking about?
I think so. I mean, I think a lot of shadow work lives here. When people are talking about shadow work, they're talking about all of the things that you've repressed over the course of your life that you've deemed as like bad by, again, either your parents' standards, or perhaps you tried a behavior in high school to get a partner or attract somebody and that didn't work. So you just kind of tamp that down.
Gotcha.
Or, you know, trying to enter a job and you have to learn how to do an interview and button up and dress nice and look the look, so to speak. And at that point, you know, maybe you don't have that kind of job anymore. Maybe you're not in that kind of life anymore. Maybe your parents are not around anymore. Maybe you're an adult now and you have maybe the voice in your head of your parents trying to keep you contained and keep you behaved and keep you in a certain way of being, like keeping you in a good standing or good behavior. But at some point you have to do this individuation process of separating yourself from those narratives, from those voices. You know, guilt is society's voice in our head. And if we're continuing to abide by that, then we're not necessarily allowing ourselves to individuate. So it's not necessarily like looking at it and throwing it all out, but it's just the opportunity to reevaluate it. So something I have written down here is that how have I reduced self-authority? How am I projecting, which is casting aspects of myself onto others or outwardly? And how are we introjecting, taking others' emotions and claiming them as our own with like shame and guilt and stuff like that? And then do different parts of myself have different solutions for the same problem that I'm facing, and creating kind of an internal split? And that kind of happens throughout the growing up process. And we wake up to these ideas that we need to work on these ideas, projections, introjections, and split ego states, so to speak.
Yeah. When I think of cleaning up, I think that's a really apt metaphor we talked about in the last podcast, which is you wake up and you see that something needs to be done. You understand, like I talked about in the last episode that, there were some things that I was claiming that were unearned, and there were some things that were earned that I wasn't claiming. And so this idea of I think we use the word cleaning up, not just when our house is dirty, but also when it's disordered, right? Like it's cluttered. It's cluttered. There's things here that maybe we should have gotten rid of, or there's things, that are missing that maybe I need that tool or, right. And so I think a part of this is waking up to the actual work that needs to be done. Right. And we use a model called the HAT model. We've done podcast episodes on it before. That stands for healing, achievement, and transcendence. And I always think of cleaning up as accurately determining what kind of work we need to do. Do I need to do healing work? Right. Do I have a trauma that I've suffered and I need to heal from it? Is it achievement work? Am I at a baseline of health, but I need to push myself further, get out of my comfort zone and become more? Or is it transcendence work? I need to let go of something. I need to, to get to the next phase, or to the next sort of the next level of myself, and let go of old stuff. And so if you use the room, it's like, what's broken in the room and it needs to be repaired or fixed or healed. What could I do to beautify the room and make it better and make it more to, maybe more ergonomic to myself, or help me have a better morning routine, or make it so that I am excited to get out of bed as opposed to like dreading getting out of bed or whatever.
Right.
And then transcendence, like what is the stuff in the room that I need to let go of and give away or sell or, and just, it's not useful for me anymore.
Right.
So when I think of cleaning up, I think of making an honest, modest assessment of the things in my life that are, that I really need to attend to. I need to attend to some stuff.
Right.
So I don't think it has to necessarily be, I don't think it has to be this big, like I've got all this trauma and I've got to do all this work around it, or even a purification process.
Yeah.
Like if you start focusing on the cleanliness of your house, you'll vacuum your way out of it when you have to leave. So I think that hyper focus on purity is this idea of like, my house has to be pristine. Well, but for who?
Right.
Right. Like who are you doing that for? Certainly not yourself, because it's not a good bargain of time. So the purification frame, when we think about cleaning up, that's still not for the self. It's usually for others. It's a form of, it's like a modeled virtue signal, right? Like I'm pure. I'm going to be, I think that's one of the reasons why I've removed the phrase, I want to become the best version of myself. I've changed it to, I want to be the most version of myself. Because sometimes the most version of me is not what others would define as the best version of me.
Right.
Right. It's like a time when I'm playing instead of working.
Best is like qualitative or judgmental in terms of work and production and outward things.
You got it. Yeah, exactly. And maybe it's not like, the most me doesn't want to be the quote unquote maximum version of me in whatever way. Like maybe I just kind of want to relax a little bit, or maybe I kind of like it that I swear sometimes, or I don't always have the right opinions or whatever. Like that's the most me. So I think cleaning up, for at least for me personally, has meant taking honest, modest assessments of what work needs to be done, and using a inner wisdom that tells me, yeah, you're on the right path here. You should probably do some work over here. You should probably do some cleanup over here.
Right.
To get to a more, and I could even call it a more refined me, right? It's, I'm removing all the stuff that isn't, right? And so I'm getting to a more refined, but not necessarily more pure.
Right. And so, we talked about kind of meditation as an access point to this self, to access point to waking up, and that cleaning up is this beginnings of exploring the repressions, like the insides of what we've experienced throughout this whole grow up process. And some of that is this assessment of the idea of good and bad, but good and bad is like, it's taking it away from the external expression of that and taking it to the internal, like what is actually quote unquote good or bad relative to my experience. So like you could deem, being loud as being bad, and then therefore not really like commanding yourself or expressing yourself or taking any kind of authority in your life, or bad could mean any number of things that we've deemed to be uncomfortable. It could be inappropriate. It could be sexual. It could be sexual expression. Maybe that's uncomfortable, and then maybe that's bad. Or maybe you deem that as hyper good, and maybe you need to kind of reassess that. And so I think it's a reassessment. It's starting to trust the internal mechanisms versus the external mechanisms, and maybe playing a little bit of comparison of the two.
Yeah. Okay. So I think I might need us to anchor something here. I'm just imagining somebody listening or watching going, okay, cleaning up. I think I know what that means. It's not pure. Like what? Maybe we can find an example from our own lives, or just even if it's a hypothetical example from something. So we have something tangible to latch onto. And then as we unpack the learning or thinking about this, we have that as a pivot point to come back to. So I don't know if you have an example that you can think in terms of, even maybe your own life, maybe you've seen yourself or Antonia go through this process. It's like, I grow up, I mature, so I'm ready to be awakened to the things I need to tune to. I mean, one of the things I've been awakened to is that I tend to walk into rooms talking. I have this imagination that the world like exists as I walk into it. So Antonia has given me the feedback, Joel, you really need to check in with people before you just start talking as you enter a room. People are already in conversation. And, and I'm usually, I always think I'm giving something, I'm bringing value, or I'm offering, but it's been reflected back to me. Like, no, you need to check in, tune into what's going on first, and then offer. So it's something I've been like, that's a real low level one, I think. It's not like an earth changing experience for myself, but I think that's what we're talking about is now I'm tuned into that.
Right.
And every time I catch myself, I'll literally walk in a room like, hey, like her and our daughter Piper will be talking like, hey, Piper, guys, I'm sorry. I just caught myself doing that. I'm trying to practice. They'll be like, what? And they'll give me their attention. I'm like, no, don't give me your attention. That's the last thing I need right now.
Right.
Keep your conversation. I need to be patient and stand here.
Right.
And I'm like trying to really catch myself, stop that behavior and change tack. That's what we're talking about cleaning up, right? I mean, is that one aspect of it?
It's one aspect of it, yeah. If we think about the idea of projections, it's usually the idea that something that's triggering us is usually something that we need to do a little bit of cleanup work around.
Yes.
Or at least recognizing that's something we need to examine. So like a version of that for me is I've noticed recently that I get triggered by someone making an assumption of my values. Like when they assume that I fit into a certain bucket or a certain political party or a certain way of thinking, or even just saying like, oh, you're an INTP, so you must be thinking this, or doing things this way, right? And I noticed that happens to me because I'm still very much doing that to other people. I'm putting people in buckets based on maybe their affiliation to a flag or a sports team or, where they live or the way they look or things like that. There's still very much that in me that I haven't really examined. And for me, that falls into really the most difficult function for me to access, which is introverted feeling authenticity. So to contrast with your kind of lighter example, this is kind of one of the deepest ones that I've had to get into, is almost overvaluing my story and my perspective and not really listening as much to other people's stories and other people's perspectives. And that's something I'm working on personally, but very much noticing my son, for example, I think he's an ISFP or ESFP. He's 8 years old. And he has a lot of wants and he has a lot of criticisms and a lot of judgments. Like we'll watch a movie and it's just constantly like, why do they look like that? Why is that like that? Why are they making that choice? Why are they doing this? It's just like these constant kind of criticisms of what their intentions are. And I'm just like persistently triggered by that. I'm like, that's because I'm doing that. I'm casting intention all the time without realizing it. And I'm very sensitive to having that done to me. Right. So there's a little quote here I have about projections. It's that when something annoys us in someone else, we usually want to correct them, help them see where they need to change. Think of road rage, for example. Instead, shadow work invites us. Yeah, road rage is like the pretty consistent example. Instead, shadow work invites us to look within. What in me is actually being triggered? No one can push our buttons if we don't have any. We must first acknowledge, befriend, and embrace what we see. Not try to fix someone else or even ourselves. That's the key. We must begin to shine the light of our own awareness on those parts of ourselves that we judge as unlovable or unworthy, to own with which was disowned, the dissociated emotion. And what really is underlying a lot of shadow work, a lot of uncovering triggers of looking at this, what I've been heard as described as like this heavy bag that we drag behind us. The shadow is like this heavy bag of stuff that we just keep stuffing it in there. We assume we've let it go. We assume we're done with it, but we really just stuff it down and it drags us. It's that we're avoiding the authentic emotion that's underneath it all. Even something like introverted feeling and is a cognitive function. It's a narrative. They're narratives. It's the way that we approach what we're experiencing actually in our soma, in our emotional experiences. So when we do clean up, cleanup work leads to true emotional processing and release. That's the idea, is to eventually be able to feel the authentic feeling of what is behind all of that, behind our stories, behind what we're intellectualizing and all of that, and actually like experience the true emotion underneath it all. And I think that's what like Personality Life Path ends up providing for a lot of people through the avenue of personality types and cognitive functions, and being able to determine which cognitive functions do I need healing, achievement, or transcendence in. Like that was powerful for me to recognize that there are actually a few areas I need healing in, not the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so it's not always heaviness. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's just little annoyances that we're like, oh, I don't notice that about me. But it's this process of really getting to know that like what I experience, other people will experience. If I can witness it in someone else, that means it's something I experience too. And it's just this continual process of getting to know the core of the human emotional experience through these sort of triggers and projections and introjections and all the complexity that goes with that.
Yeah. Is it okay?
I was just going to say, it's stuff we maybe don't like. If we see something in somebody else, there's that projection. But I also want to say there's projection in things we wish we had. We judge in others because we're envious. We wish we were more like that. So we judge it because it's actually something we wish we had. I just wanted to make that comment too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking about the example you used of walking into a room and talking.
Yeah.
I think that if it were to be a cleanup process, it would be, why am I doing that? It's an assumption of bringing value, but really if it's taking, then what's going on for me that I feel like I have to provide value the moment I'm walking in? Or is it really about value? I mean, I'm just going to pretend as if, because I actually don't know your inner dialogue.
I don't care about going into this. It's fine. Yeah.
But it's like, well, is it really about providing value, or is it about controlling the environment, right? So that it's going the direction I want it to. So I'm never in somebody else's frame.
Yeah.
Like, is it?
That's probably more like it. I mean, that's probably closer to it. I'm sure.
Yeah. Like if
reflecting on the self.
If I bring my energy to it and my energy like steals the show, then now I know that I can move the energy as I want to.
Or I'm never bored.
Or I'm never bored.
Probably a lot of it. As I'm like tuning in, I'm like, it's probably a lot of boredom. I don't want to be bored in a situation.
Right. And so all of that would have come behind the, I'm trying to provide value.
Yeah.
Right?
That's the nice way of telling myself.
Well,
look how much value I'm providing.
And
altruism.
Thank you for being willing to provide an example of it that is personal to you and true and honest. Because we're all doing that all the time, right?
Yeah.
We've got the story. We've got the, I'm doing this because of this reason. And yet if we unearth it, if we just kind of turn it over a little bit and go, okay, and what else is going on there too?
Right.
Usually that's content material that we didn't want to see, which is why it wasn't offered first as a part of the explanation.
Right.
And that's oftentimes shadow material, right? It's the stuff that we're unconscious around. And so I think the willingness to clean up means the willingness to have things reflected back to us, which is why we have to start with grow up and then wake up, right? Because the grow up part, at the very beginning, I said that I wanted to wrap in Jung's archetypes about the self, the persona, the ego, the shadow, and then the whole self. And when we grow up, part of growing up is dialing on our persona, our interface with other people. When we dial in our interface with other people, we get ourselves accurately reflected back to us, because persona isn't intended to be a fake version of us, right? To get something we want or to make somebody else happy. It's an access point to our true selves that we can't show everything to everyone. So we choose to show parts of ourselves to certain people in certain contexts. And the more persona work we've done, the more honest that persona is. And so when people reflect things back to us, the reason why we choose not real personas, the reason why we put on masks, is because we don't want that reflected back. So if they reflect something back to us, but our persona is overly curated or not true, then we don't have to receive it, because we go, well, that they're not really seeing the real me anyway. But if you do a good job growing up, which in part is our access point to the outside world, then when we have things reflected back to us and it's part of the clean, we woke up because we had this interaction. And we go, oh, then maybe this is something I should do something about. And then we get into cleanup. Now we have the capacity to pull some of that material that was unconscious for us. We now put it into the conscious realm. Now it becomes part of our understanding of ourselves, which is ego, right? Our ego is our awareness and our understanding of ourselves. And now that big bag of shadowy material that we carry around got a little lighter. So cleanup in part is moving content from the unconscious into the conscious, right? And the crazy thing is that if we don't do this work, the older we get, the more it goes the opposite direction. Things we were once aware of, things that were once conscious for us and in our ego, we start to become blind to it. We don't even see that stuff. And now it goes in the shadow, and our shadow gets heavier and bigger. So the cleanup work is lightening the load of that, right? And then having those moments of, oh, I'm projecting something. Oh, I'm introjecting something. Oh, this is an opportunity. The world said that I probably should do something about this. Okay, well, I initially don't agree because I think I'm awesome, but if I think about it, maybe blah, blah, blah. Right. And so, and then now I'm unearthing my intentions and motivations. I'm unearthing my stories. I'm realizing maybe I have some healing work to do here. I've got some trauma, or I'm just not pushing myself. I'm allowing myself to stay in a comfort zone, and I'm not maximizing this experience, or maybe I should just let some stuff go.
And just to speak to what you were talking about earlier, Joel, about like the purification aspect, it's like, we don't really know how big the bag is. We don't really know how much stuff is actually in there until we experience something or someone that causes that trigger to let us know that we have something in there to actually evaluate. So it's the willingness to face that grow up work actually facilitates, is like expanding your capability to be able to tackle that. And then the wake up work to be able to be willing to go back into maybe dream analysis or symbols, or, noticing little messages that are reflecting our psychology back to us.
Or just listening to people's feedback.
Right. Exactly. So there really is no purification. That's an idealism that we usually have to let go of. And a lot of this is sometimes going in and unraveling a lot of idealisms we have that are a part of what ends up being let go. And that brings up like the point of introjections as well, is the idea that we could be taking on all sorts of other people's emotional experiences. And those are things we need to let go. Where there are projections where we have the triggers and we need to own that. We need to own that that's actually us, where that's a reflection of me and my experience. There's a lot of emotion that we take on that comes from within that is not actually ours. It's something that we took on from our parents' experience, or something from, a teacher or a guide or something else,
or
society, or something that was instilled in us that is not actually resonant with my experience as a person. I have written here that introjections produce shame and guilt. So if you're experiencing shame and guilt, there's usually some narrative or story in there that's not actually yours that you're holding on to. And then projections distance us from ourselves. So it's like this dealing with these paradoxes of how we're pushing things away and pulling things closer that are disconnected from our actual authentic emotional experience.
So I'm just kind of thinking through this, and I'm examining my own life, and I'm realizing when I was a child, like an actual child, before I grew up, like literally grew up, I wasn't bothered by as many things as I'm bothered by now. It was really hard to trigger me as an 8-year-old. Like, I mean, I had like somebody could say something mean to me, like, yeah, whatever. I didn't even have a sense of what I could be triggered about when I was younger. And I realized the maturation process enables me to be triggered and to see some of this material reflected back to me. So I know a lot of people are very interested in shadow work, but there needs to be some growing up process, and maybe an awakening process as well, that will allow you to really examine some of these areas. Because I think, like, as an example, I'll see if I can land this as an example. I remember thinking of myself as a young person, even in my 20s, I had this viewpoint. I was like, when I die, I don't care. Burn my body, throw it in the lake, throw it in a river, throw it in the ground. I'm dead. What do I care?
Yeah.
Right. But now I'm like, actually, when I die, I think I want to actually be buried somewhere with a tombstone and kind of have a remembrance, some kind of a memory of me. And so if somebody was talking about, cavalierly disposing a body or carelessly, when I was like 22, I'd be like, yeah, who cares? It doesn't matter.
Right.
But now it's like, no, you have to have more reverence for humanity and a human. And it matters now because it matters to me now. So when somebody says they're cavalier around it, like I would have been at 21, I'm triggered by something that I wouldn't even have cared about back then.
Right.
But because I grew up in a way, and I realize the value of human life more now than ever. I think as you get older, you realize, I'm not going to live forever. It's very valuable.
Right.
By extension, what happens to a body after, like how it's treated and the respect and dignity it's given after it's no longer alive, like that matters to me now. No, I don't get triggered while I yell at a person or anything. It like bothers me a little bit when people are so cavalier about life and just disposing of life. It's like, whoa, dude. But there's part of me that used to be that way. But I grew up into this idea that, no, I think we should take care of that. I think that's something that's important for all of us in society. And that's one example. I've had so many of these, and it's just been in the past year or two that I've really reflected on some of them.
Right.
And I don't think I had access to them until I grew up in a way. Does this resonate with both of you? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, I think in some ways when you grow up, the territory expands. You experience more things. You get exposure to more people, to more ideas, to more concepts, to more things that you have emotions around.
What matters to you
emerges, right? With people experience and stuff like that.
I think, I don't want to.
No.
Okay. I think that part of the purity that I've heard, particularly in people in personal growth, realms, is the goal is to not be triggerable at all.
Yeah.
And that's the exact opposite. That's 180 degrees from other parts of society that say that anytime you trigger somebody, that's wrong.
Yeah.
And I think from my observation, the middle ground is get triggered and work through it.
Yeah.
So I think it's not about never triggering somebody. I don't think that that's healthy. And it's not about being incapable of being triggered. It's a matter of, I mean, when we get triggered, it means that somebody poked at a value. Somebody pushed at something that is important to us.
Yeah.
And so that's fine. There's nothing wrong with getting triggered. It's what you do with the trigger. Do you immediately blame the other person for triggering you? That's a projection, right? Well, you're bad and wrong for having triggered me. If you get to a place where you're untriggerable, I mean, either you're a monk, meditating on a mountain on a bed of nails, and you're just kind of disconnected from the rest of the world, or it's an affectation. Because I don't think anybody who's actually engaging with reality is going to be completely untriggerable. Like, we're always going to have triggers. And we want those triggers because the triggers afford us an opportunity to dive into the shadow, right? And go, what's really going on here for me? So triggers are actually helpers in some ways. And if you can see them that way, I think the older we get, the more we start to realize what our true values are, like our values, right? And the things that mean something to us.
Yeah.
And when the world shows a disrespect for it, we can blame the world, or we can go, that's interesting. What is this value around? And then how do I live consistently with it, right? And is it a value I want? And is it something that's true and honest for me? Or is it something I adopted someplace? And if you grow into it, it's probably closer to yours than anything else. So, and that makes me think about that concept that the persona is a counterbalance to the shadow. Persona work, and I think we massively, I soapbox this all the time, but I think we massively undervalue the importance of persona work.
Yeah.
And I think the zeitgeist, the idea of doing good persona work means you don't care about other people's opinions, right? You don't care. And that's not good persona work. We're supposed to care about interfacing with others. We are supposed to care about the impact we have on other people and the impact they have on us. There's nothing wrong with that. When we care too little, like you did as a child, I was kind of the opposite. I was actually kind of a sensitive kid, right? I had to get tougher because a lot of arrows came, but that's childhood, right?
Yeah.
But when I was a kid, I was actually kind of sensitive to feedback. And when people said mean things to me, I very much took it personally. Now, I'm in the heart triad of the Enneagram, and you're in the head triad. So that's probably a piece of this. But it was, my persona work was getting to a point where I wasn't so sensitive I couldn't interface effectively with others. It was me not introjecting as much. For you, persona work was being willing to show up caring about other people's opinions, right? And so persona work is actually caring just enough, right? Like there's a sweet spot of caring about the outside world, and it's caring just enough. Not so much that we hand our power over to others, but not so much that we disregard the relationship as unimportant, including the relationship with society or the relationship with strangers or people just in our acquaintances or whatever. And when we have that, I think when we have that persona work just right, we're still going to get triggered because we're caring. We still are caring.
Right.
We're not taking everything as a trigger, but we're also not taking anything as a trigger. And then we have the ability to get those triggers enough to go, okay, what is this telling me about something I'm not looking at? And that's why they're counterbalances for each other. The better your persona is, the more dialed in that is, the smaller your shadow is. Right. And that's kind of how you can tell when somebody's got a lot of shadow content because their persona is like kind of out of whack. Yeah.
It's one note.
Well, then sometimes that's the emergent of the shadow work is their presence changes, like their affectation, what they wear, how they show up in certain contexts, or they find a way that the way that they dress fits more contexts. Like, the idea of survival of the fittest is not really about strength. It's about adaptability. And ultimately having a more adaptable persona is an evolutionary strength. Like, we're able to navigate more situations and be more adaptable. And that complements the idea of what you're saying around being triggered. It's like, we're going to be triggered. That's a part of the human experience to be triggered. It's not, if you're trying to control the relationship to being triggered or not being triggered, you're trying to avoid, or you're trying to game the system. You're trying to fight against nature, which is not really going to work in your favor.
And it's not actual cleanup.
If it's not cleanup work,
Right.
no.
It's like hoping that cartoon birds will come clean up your room for you.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's like some magic thinking I think we have around cleanup sometimes.
A little bit, yeah. And you know, we can with the relationship to the persona side of things, it can very much be this relationship to extremes when we recognize that there's this relationship to, you know, maybe you were completely repressed as a child in terms of sexuality. Maybe you got no teaching about sexuality and it was totally tamped down. You were not allowed to talk about it, not even in an innocent way to like talk about the body or anything like that.
Right. They all had nicknames. It was all dirty.
Yeah. The little piddle diddle or whatever you talk about. Like you can't actually say the actual words and things like that.
The tinkler.
The tinkler or whatever, you know, it's like a Batman villain.
The tinkler.
The tinkler.
Usually you see comic coming out.
Nobody resists the tinkler.
Nobody.
Who would even play the tinkler in Hollywood? Who would be the best tinkler?
Oh God. Jim Carrey yet again.
The tinkler.
The tinkler. But it's this idea that like, it's like if you've repressed it into your shadow and now you have this room in your life that you can actually start to explore that. It's like, it kind of bursts through. It's like someone gets hypersexualized or they start posting themselves on Instagram or they become a model or they like go to such extreme to try to like really pull out this side of themselves to enable it. Now the challenge is, you know, not every aspect of sexuality is a good thing. Like you can't force yourself upon another person. Right. And like, that's not good for society or civilians or anything like that. So there's this nuance that we have to find this ballast for as we explore those things. And that's really the challenge of going through the shadow work is now we look at these things, try to do it slowly so we don't get bit by it. We're taken over by it and also assess what just needs to let go, what needs to be integrated and probably what needs to stay in there.
Right. Not being too reactive or reactionary once you wake up to something that needs addressed.
Yep. So you guys are talking about this idea of persona, and I just want to give example, like a hypothetical example, just to make sure I land the point.
Yeah.
So I'm going to the grocery store and I see maybe a man in his, 60s with a shirt and tie on, everything's tucked in, perfectly presenting. I start a conversation with this gentleman, maybe hypothetically, and it's like it's a very curated presence. They won't like this person won't talk outside of what they know. They kind of have a certain presentation. I can't get them to break frame. They're very kind of stuck in this one way of presenting. And they might have taken a lot of time to curate that presentation before they left the house. And then maybe like, I think my grandfather was like this, like, your shirt's tucked in, he had all this like very curated persona. Your hair has to be combed short. It's all these like markers, no facial hair, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Very curated persona. And it was kind of like, that's what we should all be like in on, right? You should tuck your shirt in because that's what men do kind of thing. And it's like, whoa, it feels like such one note.
Yeah.
So we think, oh, well, the alternative to that is the same grocery store I walk in and I see somebody maybe in, like slip-on slippers with their pajamas, kind of their hair's all mess with holding the box of cereal, checking out. It's like, oh, that person really has their persona down. They don't care what anybody thinks about them. They're super rested in themselves. But I think what we can say is, well, they might just be as ego-driven as the guy that's got it all presented well.
Yep.
It's just the alternative. It's the mere opposite of it. They don't have any persona dialed in. They don't, I would say, my opinion is they don't have a lot of self-respect when they go out in the world. They care so little about what anybody cares about, what thinks about them, that they don't even try, as far as I would be concerned. Against that, my personal judgment, my personal opinion. It's probably shared by a lot of people, and I'm not saying like a quick trip to the store or a one-off on that. I'm saying that's a lifestyle. That's how you show up to the world. Like, I don't care about anybody. I'm going to do what I want. I'll tell my boss to F off. If it gets too hard, I just leave work. I'm not going to keep a job that I have to do what I don't like to do. Like, I show up this way to the world and the world organizes around me.
Right. Just
as ego-driven as somebody that's very curated. Picture perfect.
Yeah.
And I think both are persona.
And that really highlights the paradoxes we tend to create by hyperfixating on a rigid persona. Because that's still a rigid persona. The idea of just like, I'm not going to shower. I'm not going to show up. Like, I'm just going to completely let go. There's still kind of a rigidity there.
Yeah.
But by hyper focusing on that rigidity, we create more opportunities to be triggered.
Yeah.
Because more people are going to probably comment on that or create more uncomfortable opportunities for someone to like stare at you, and you're not really navigating the world in the way that you want to. You're just rebelling and still attached to it. It's like being an atheist relative to Christianity. You're still attached to it.
Well, And both sides, you can tell, are occupying a similar energy because intimacy is very difficult with either side.
Mhm.
On the one side of the overly curated aspect, it's like you have to fit a certain mold even to be able to engage or interact. And and because there's so many rules of engagement, you're probably not going to get very far. You're not going to be able to experience any form of intimacy with this person.
Right.
And like getting to know the real them, what makes them laugh, what makes them kind of chill out, like what are their deepest fears, what are, what's really going on under there.
Right.
And the overly curated persona on that side is intended to do just that, because then if you reflect something back to them, they can say they don't know the real me, right? There's no intimacy there. So because there's no intimacy, there's no ability to reflect back.
Right.
And the person who's like, the screw society, right? Everything has to organize around me. There's also no intimacy opportunities there because it's all about that person, right? And they might tell you everything about them, kind of, but they're not there. They will not receive any feedback from the outside world,
Right.
right? They're just not going to. So on the one side, it's any feedback is discounted because they don't know the real me. And on the other side, it's I'm just not going to accept any feedback at all because I don't care about you.
Yeah.
I only care about me.
Right.
And so both create the same challenge, which is there's no ability to have other people reflect back to them things that they might need to be attending to or addressing.
Right. And we live in a really interesting time period where people across the world are able to communicate with each other in a way that's never happened before. I always think of those like coexist stickers on the back of a car that has like the varying, is like the peace sign and
all the religious
symbols and stuff like that. It's this sort of like kumbaya idealism. But we are actually living in this time period where we're coexisting. It's just not all kumbaya. And it's just not all happy, because everyone has the opportunities to trigger each other sooner and more immediately than ever before. And at the same time are responding, are being more highly triggered because they're exhibiting more rigid personas, especially on the internet where you can't at all show nuance of who you are as a person. You have your profile picture, you have maybe the last few statuses you posted or posts or whatever from whatever place. And people make assumptions, or you make assumptions about who they are as a person based on these little few things that they've said. Yeah. And when you respond to them, they respond to you, you keep triggering each other, and you don't have the tools yet, perhaps. I mean, many people seem to not yet. And I don't mean that as a value judgment, just where things are, that we eventually, that's hopefully going to be a feature, not a bug of humanity, to eventually be able to take these kind of social tools. Something like Personality Life Path helps people go through this process of learning what's going on with themselves, to activate, to work through triggers and to process and release and all of that stuff. These tools are just not available at scale. So people continually trigger each other, but people who are listening or watching, get an opportunity to not be that.
Yeah. And oh my gosh, that's such a good point, because I think of younger people really stuck in this. This is a real challenge for younger generations. Because they're trying, there is a desire to be consistent with one's identity across all platforms, right? Just as inside of ourselves. Like, even if we're showing different parts of ourselves in different contexts, we still want to have a consistent through line of who we are and know who we are and not misrepresent ourselves. The challenge is that online, like you said, is like that one meme where it's like, I love pancakes. What, you saying you hate waffles or whatever? It's like, dude, that's a whole different sentence, right? Yeah. It's there's a lot of like changing what people are saying to fit the reader's worldview, right? And a lot of pushback and a lot of, I don't know, like projection onto the other person of things they never said or meant.
Right.
So that probably, that makes it so that we're reluctant to receive feedback, right? Well, I'm not going to receive feedback from the outside world. People are a bunch of idiots, right? So there might be a bit of that, but also, how do I communicate who I am in my persona? I must have to do it in flags next to my name or in my,
or the barcode of personality types on your,
you got it. That's right.
Profile. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I have mine, right? On my X handle or Twitter, the artist formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah.
You know, I've got like some of mine on there too,
Yep.
but it's like, how do I communicate who I am in less than 250 characters? Right.
Yep.
So it's a real challenge. And yet that's the primary playground of a lot of younger people is social media communication. So the persona work is really tough, and you can see people's shadows are growing, right? It's like people get triggered and you're bad for triggering me. And it's like, or you get to go dumpster diving, right? Which is what we all should be doing when we get triggered.
Yeah.
So I think it's an increasingly contemporary challenge and problem. And as we mentioned before, I mean, we're about to get to show up, which is contribution. But before you get to show up, you've got to have these tracks have to be laid.
Right.
Grow up, wake up, clean up. And a lot of young people want to show up, right?
Yeah.
It's really important to them to show up, but you got to lay these tracks first.
Yeah.
And the cleanup part is, I mean, arguably one of the hardest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the reframe here is that cleanup, as we started this podcast episode, was, could be construed as this, clean up your room and keep it that way forever, or it'll stay that way forever, or some sort of purity idea. But I think the reframe is that cleanup is really learning how to clean up. It's learning the process of cleaning up as a continual process, just as you learn how to clean your room. And it's not like you just clean it once and you're done.
Right.
It's a continual process. You're still living life. You're still throwing your clothes on the floor or doing whatever that's going to require persistent cleanup work throughout your life.
And seasonally, there's going to be time periods when you get sick and your room's going to get more trashed, right? Or time periods where you can't even, it was a really hard, week at work. And so your room got trashed again. And now you have to put extra attention to cleaning it up.
Right.
And so it's not just a maintenance thing. It's also recognizing that there's going to be times that are tougher than other times. Right.
And there's the interior and exterior component of it. That's why I keep using the outer world example of cleaning your room, because as you're doing that heavier work, sometimes there's heavy stuff that comes up, and you might need to start building your life around aspects of that to accommodate those moments, or that that you have some challenge, especially when you get into cleanup work for the first time. Yeah. It's a heavy burden. It's a lot to go through. There's a part of it that's like strangely exciting. Like there's this weird addiction to healing that can happen sometimes. But then there's the other side of it too, where it's very much destabilizing. I think I've heard you on a podcast, Joel, mention that it's kind of like having, I think it was like transcendence work is like having, it's like if you have a 5-lane highway of your mind, of your life, and you have to close 3 of the lanes all of a sudden. And like everything's just far less efficient. You just can't do life the same way you used to. You might not have the energetic capacity. You might be distracted by all of these things you need to process. And you have to find ways to accommodate your life circumstances to be able to process these things. And these things are going to come up every once in a while. Again, like I said, it's like, there's no guarantee that the size of the shadow bag. You just don't know what's in there. It's endless potentially. And, you might come across something that just totally destabilizes you. I might lose my wife tomorrow or something. And if that happens, like that rocks my world. And then I have a lot of things I have to contend with from any kind of, or like, you lose a parent and there's like all this stuff that comes along with it that you have to adjust your inner and outer world to accommodate. So they're kind of in tandem is really what I'm trying to say.
I love this idea of it being a skill. My dad always used to say, it's not about what you learn, it's about learning how to learn. And I think that's what you're saying. It's not about cleaning up, it's learning how to clean up so that you have this skill you carry with you.
Yeah.
And you can probably get more proficient at over time, which is great. So I'm tuning into my own life. There's a project I'm working on right now to disconnect from. So I have ENFP preferences, and I've noticed that I use the emotion or the energy of anxiety to motivate myself to get something accomplished. And usually it's on a timeline. Like I'm trying to future project, okay, I need to have something done by a certain time. I'll create almost the crisis moment at that time, and I'll bring it forward and I'll create this anxiety in myself to try to get myself into action. So I woke up to this idea. This is a few years ago. Like I know I use anxiety to motivate myself. I've already been awoken to it. It's been one of the things I've been working on. And I think I've gotten to a place where I think I can start to let it go more and more. Like this is what we're talking about, cleaning up. I'm aware of that. I've had it reflected back to me from multiple places. and I'm starting to work on this, and I'm getting more discreet around working on this, right? And in all the process, and I'm tuning into the self to say, okay, I've got to find other techniques. And while I'm working on this, that lane highway idea is exactly what I'm experiencing, because it's like I had this motivation I could use anytime I needed it. I could just pull on it. And now I've shut those 3 lanes off. I'm saying I'm not going to pull on that motivation anymore.
Right.
And I'm always tempted to go there, and I still struggle with it, but I try to stay on the 2 lanes. It's going to be more healthy. Excitement, anticipation, not anxiety, because it's the same emotion, just a different narrative. So I'm trying to connect a new narrative to it to get excited. But then I was awakened to, I think, a level deeper. I think one of the things that anxiety and even excitement can do is it can take me away from what I think I actually fear success ultimately, because it's going to require more, more responsibility and all of these things. I'm like watching, and there's like a real nuanced awakening I've had to this, like underneath the anxiety, as I'm trying to connect something new. I'm struggling with it. I'm trying to find new motivations. I'm like, oh wait, there's something else under here that I had to like work on that first. So it's almost like as I'm working on that, I'm like digging up more stuff. And I'm like, wow, I got to clean that up now. What does that mean? Am I scared of success? Am I scared of this while working out? I wonder if I was using anxiety with a mindset of like, oh, that's motivating me, and that's where the work has to be. But really, there's a lot like that probably could have been handled a lot faster, but it was actually something even deeper. The reason I bring that up to say is like that took me a long time to discover all of this. Like it's been a multi-year process.
Yeah.
So is there a way we could almost diagram maybe that skill set? Like, what is it actually? What's the mechanism? What are we going through process wise to be able to clean up something? So the first thing I think on here that I have is triggered. You get triggered.
Yeah.
Something triggers you, or you have something reflected back to you. It's triggering other people. Me being anxious is like triggering Antonia and other people around me. Like, I can't operate with your anxiety. It's too much. Okay, I'm triggering others around me.
What was going on, by the way?
Huh?
That's exactly what was going on.
Yeah, it destabilizes people because they're not using the same motivation structure, right, that I'm using. And so I'm watching other people have a harder time when I'm bringing a lot of anxiety. It's working for me, but it's actually destroying my team or other people that we're working with or Antonia and our partnership.
Right.
So like, I got to fix it. I got to figure this out and clean this up.
Right.
But so trigger doesn't have to be my trigger. I could be triggering somebody else. They could be reflecting this back in my shadow to me. Okay, this is not working for me. Oh, okay.
Right.
Tune to this. The next thing I have to do though is I have to own that. And I know Ken Wilber has been introducing, I thought this would be a great place to talk about that. He has this concept of own up too. We're not gonna have a whole episode about it. Yeah. This might be a good time to inject that. I think we have to own the thing that's either being triggered in somebody else reflected or in ourselves.
Yeah.
That's a key part, right?
That's specifically for projections.
Yeah.
And it's a word of caution because own up isn't appropriate for every circumstance, but for many people, it's like if you're distancing yourself from your actual emotion, you're projecting it onto someone else. Like the healing work around that is to own that, oh, that's actually part of my experience. That's something that I do, actually. It's like the road rage thing. You're yelling at somebody for cutting someone off and you're just like, I just did that 5 minutes ago. Yeah. Like I do that all the time. Right. And so it's someone who's doing a lot of introjection. And I think we all do some version of introjection, some sort of shame or guilt somewhere in there. Telling them to own up might not be the best solution for them because they're already owning other people's stuff too much. Yes. Right. That's a really good point. Yeah. A lot of people have that experience. Right. Right. So it's kind of getting to know in which circumstances require which thing to do. So maybe it's more accept, maybe not own. It's more accept that this is going on. Like maybe I'm owning somebody's stuff too much or I'm not owning my stuff enough. I'm accepting that is what's going on. And I got to look at that. Right. Right. To what you were saying before about kind of having to let go of a certain motivational structure, like your anxiety is what's motivated you, for example. That's usually a lot of fear that people have going through this process. Like they hold on to their survival strategies and their certain panic structures or whatever they need to keep them from actually feeling the true emotion that they're actually experiencing. It's like the heart is in this place of I don't know, I'm new, I'm alive, this is weird, I don't know what to do. And then I kick it up to the head and head's like, all right, let's learn cognitive functions. Let's, let's project shit onto other people. Let's try to figure out what's going on in the world. Like, let's do what we can to distance ourselves from actually feeling the heaviness or the challenge of actually being within the authentic heart experience. To what you're saying in terms of what the mechanism in here is, is people get triggered. And I think it's the ego that gets triggered.
Yeah.
It's because the ego is what's trying to protect us. It's the childlike part of us that's just like, I'm in control. I know what's going on in the world. I know how to navigate this. And I know the strategy that I need to deploy to create a success for myself. I always see that with like Enneagram strategies. I feel like Enneagram type gets flared up in hungry, angry, lonely, and tired situations. I use that acronym, the HALT acronym for that.
Yeah.
And when I know I'm, for example, I'm a sexual 1 in the Enneagram. When I get angry and judgmental, I know I'm under-resourced. And I know that my ego is flaring up and there's something I'm either afraid of or I'm triggered by and I need to own, or I'm feeling some sort of shame or guilt that I need to let go of, right? And I think of the ego as this like junction box. That's the way that I think of it, as this point between the shadow and the persona. The ego is essentially trying to decide, what do I keep in my persona? What do I put in the shadow bag, so to speak? And the work that we're doing often in the cleanup work is like recalibrating that ego trigger space, like recalibrating how our ego responds and using that witness consciousness that we've developed during the wake up place to be able to look at our ego and almost have conversations with it and say like, we're okay. Sometimes it's like self-validation. Sometimes it's being softer to oneself. Sometimes it's asserting yourself to your ego a little bit too. And being able to say like, no, we've got it. Don't worry. It's okay. And, choosing to, throw it a bone every once in a while. It's like, yeah, you're right. We should be paranoid about that. We should be upset about that. We should be triggered by that. That's cool. And then while that's worried about that, I'm going to do this shadow work over here. And, it's really about creating the separation from ego and self.
Mm-hmm.
The ego is not us.
Yeah.
It's that kind of idea. And also the ego is not something to be quote unquote killed. That's like this weird narrative that gets thrown around. It's almost like an organ. You can't kill it. It's a part of our survival strategy, but it's something that doesn't own our experience either. And if we're able to calibrate that and create conscious choice for that, like, that's why we get triggered again if we bring up a shadow material, because the ego's doing the old strategy and saying like, no, I thought we got rid of that. We're not supposed to look at that. Why are we doing that? And then it's you having the witness consciousness and saying like, no, we're going to look at this. We're not going to keep it. We're not sure if we're going to keep it. We're just going to look at it first and then go through that process over and over again. And with Personality Life Path, we do that with cognitive functions and helping people process through that to decide what can be let go, what needs to stay in the shadow versus what needs to come up into the persona.
Yeah, I appreciate all the nods to Personality Life Path. It's a pretty good program. So
it's
I appreciate
fantastic.
You. Thank you. So what came up for me as you were talking is, I mentioned before, I was like, the goal isn't to be untriggerable, but I have noticed that when people do some solid cleanup work, they find themselves being less triggered all the time because they learn that mechanism of hang tight, right? And we talk about sometimes when we're triggered and when we go crazy and then we chill out for a second, we call it a minute to be human. And so like sometimes you just get triggered and you just do. And if you can slow everything down and then study it and figure it out, a lot of times you go, oh, well, I guess maybe this wasn't as big a thing as I thought it was. And so I think you become less triggerable. But like you said, there are moments when, yeah, I should be triggered by this, as in like, this is a values thing for me. So maybe it's a breach of boundaries. Right. And the trigger isn't like, how dare you? It's like, oh, hey, you might have stepped over a boundary. So I should have a conversation with you. Right. Trigger doesn't have to necessarily be a big thing, even though, I mean, at least in the current vernacular of how it's used, originally it was a much bigger deal. But now how we use it so casually in society, it's not as much. There was one more thing I think that I wanted to add to the own piece, which is it feels like ownership, or the concept of owning something, it once again brings in that concept of discretion, which is not too much and not too little. Like you were talking about, people who tend to project probably need to own more. People who introject probably need to own less. And I was thinking about it in the context of owning how other people, like maybe how your past experiences have impacted you. So owning that if you had traumas of the past, or if you had circumstances or situations in the past that you don't want to, and maybe this is me as having ENTP preferences, that you don't want to really like acknowledge how much it impacted you or how much of a stamp it left on you.
Yeah.
Part of owning is going, no, I was impacted by that. Conversely, it's not it's not creating a current narrative that is nothing but how people stamp themselves on you,
Mhm.
right? It's like, well, I'm here because people were really mean to me my whole life, or because, right? And so, again, that concept of own up
Mhm.
is like a nice discrete center point
Right.
Mhm.
of not too much, not too little, own the right things. It's more about just kind of being radically honest with yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think the other aspect that we haven't really touched on that I think is important, at least to put a cliff note on, is trigger isn't always like a negative, upset thing. It's not
Mhm.
always about like road rage and you're angry and upset about something or someone. You can have what's called a golden shadow, which is like you can overly admire someone
Mhm.
in an effort to continue to lower yourself. You know, you
Mhm.
could say that someone's like a really amazing teacher or someone's like, you know, this amazing artist, and using that as a reason to not try to be
Yes.
the ambition point that you actually would like to be.
Mhm.
Right. So it's like taking that and that's what's called a golden shadow.
Oh, interesting. So that's like a situation where you're living vicariously, or like they've got that covered, so I don't have to show up, or
A little bit like that. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's continuing to, it's like saying that it's like saying I'm not good enough to do that. So I'm going to like overly admire this person and I'm going to put them on a pedestal
Mm.
and I'm going to keep them there and I'm going to keep me here. And that's another way of making the ego feel safe, you know, because again, like you talked about this fear of success.
Yeah.
And I think that can come up for people when they have a fear of success, is like, it's not only the fear of more responsibility, which is very valid as well, but it's like what happens when I have to show up and people recognize me and, you know, or like, what if I'm going to really like that?
Yeah.
What if I really like that?
Yeah.
You know, that's actually something I've had to be working through with my show up process, with my showing up to the mental wellness open mic night I did a few weeks ago. Is I wrote a book called Happy Chemicals, a neurotic memoir. And in that book, I explored what I called my inner authoritarian. It's this part of me that just like wants control over everything. And I'm so like, there's this rigid ego aspect of me that just wants complete and total control of a room or a space or a process or people or whatever. It's like this really id kind of warrior part
Yeah.
of me. And I recognized when I was on stage that the crowd was a very obedient crowd. And I had this talk with myself where I was like, look, this is an opportunity. And I was like, okay, everybody stand up. And I got everyone to do like a breath work exercise in the moment. And I got to do like kind of that command and control sort of desire that I kind of pushed down for myself, that I don't really allow myself to exert a certain authority around. So I have it within myself. I talked about it in a generational theory episode talking about dark side of millennials, that there is a little bit of an authoritarian shadow, but I very much have that for me as an individual. And so I had opportunities to let that out in a safe way, because I assumed that that's just going to be bad for me to exert myself and to create these contexts in which I'm quote unquote controlling people or controlling human beings. And I'm like, no, that's not great. And I wrote through that process in my book. And I think that's an example of a golden shadow, something that I'm assuming is going to be bad, but actually is going to be very good for me to actually step up and to lead and actually like being admired and like that people are applauding and responding to my commands. Like I like that feeling, but I'm at a place of growth where I'm not overtaken by that feeling. It's just certain acceptance of my own inner power that, you know, it feels good and I can own that.
Well, and it's there regardless if you're going to express it or not. It's going to be passive aggressive if you don't tune it to that.
Exactly.
Sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to tease him. How dare you step into leadership?
Yeah.
How dare you?
How dare I do that?
So, okay. So the skill of it, this idea of getting triggered, whether it's negative, positive, but your triggers an awareness of sorts, like we talked about in the last episode.
Yep.
You awaken to something, you're aware of it. Okay, I need to focus on this. And now I need to accept that this is something I'm going to tune to, not just push it away. I pushed away the work on anxiety for a while. Okay, I'm going to work on the anxiety.
Yep.
Here we go. So now what, I mean, is that where it just, now what? Like, that's what I want to build here for somebody that's listening or watching. What's kind of we don't have to go into like specific like step by step, but now that someone's accepted, I've accepted my anxiety. Now am I going to, I guess I want to set up maybe what I would think, like how I immediately process, I want measurements or feedback mechanisms to know
Right.
how I'm doing.
Right.
So I need some kind of attunement. Like I can tune into Antonia and say, okay, can you tell me when you feel my anxiety rising? Because I'm not always aware of it because I use it. It's like a fish in water.
Yeah.
It's something so part of me. I'm also an Enneagram 6.
Right.
So I'm in the fear triad of the Enneagram as well as an ENFP.
Yeah.
And so I'm always attuned to it. It's such a natural part of me that I've asked you to reflect on it. My children, other people in our company. Another INTP friend of mine just told me the other day, it's like when you're around, sometimes it's like you're humming at this level. It's like, I can't even think. I need to go into another room. Like, okay, then I'm still like, this is still being projected out from me. And I'm still not aware, man, I'm still not aware of it. I'm like frustrated that I got that feedback just in the last 3 days.
Right.
Like, so I feel like, okay, I got more work to do. So I think we connect some type of a feedback mechanism or how we're doing on this thing that we've now accepted about ourselves.
Yeah. I think the challenge there is usually one of the first things we can do is just watch. Like we just pull the shadow material thing out of the bag and we just look at it. We notice a behavior and we're like, just for a while, catching when we do that and catching how often we do that and catching who that affects. And so sometimes the mechanism might be how smooth your life starts to become as you start to calm that down, or you find outlets for it. It might not be like, the answer might not be repressing it more or trying to repress it, trying to create a shadow out of it. It might be like, this thing needs a place to go. It's like my inner authoritarian needs a stage. It needs somewhere to go. I need something to do with it. Right. So it might be that.
So redirect it.
It might be in the case of your anxiety, it needs like a healthy outlet. So it's not just blasting out at everybody at all the time, for example.
Or replacement maybe. So redirection because when we get an old behavior, a vacuum is there and something else might just flow in. We need to think mindfully about, like if I remove anxiety, I need another motivation to push me. So I'm trying to connect to excitement. One of the way, part of why we're doing, I think, our Personality Quest program right now, I get excited about this. I get excited about hosting people every week. And so now the anxiety didn't really have anywhere to go. I have a place at least once a week to put my excitement and attention and attunement and all the energy I can generate. I've got a place to put it. So I'm redirecting it.
Right.
I'm replacing it with something else.
Right. Some of the challenges too is, we coaches, mentors, this is another space where all of this is like super helpful to have people who are experienced navigating through these things for the sake of accountability, creating new kinds of pressure for you to actually do the work, to be accountable to people, group coachings, things like that. But I also think it's actually helpful at this stage to get into like archetype work or to understand what different archetypes are, to perhaps see where this behavior, how this resonates with other people as well. So it's not like a solitary experience of like, I'm the only person that constantly experiences anxiety. Like that's just not true. Like what archetypes fit that? And like, what is the desire of some of those archetypes? So there's dream analysis where you can sort of look at what the unconscious is trying to tell you, because ultimately, like sometimes anxiety could mean something completely different. Like what is the heart actually trying to tell me? There could be grief there that's being covered up. There could be a desire that's being covered up. There could be whatever. It could be just this mechanism for something you're actually feeling all the time that you're not letting yourself access.
Yeah.
But again, like these things, like I think it's a challenge to let yourself do these things with safety. It's like just doing it by yourself. The reason I did Personality Life Path is because I kind of reached a limit of trying to figure this all out by myself. And there were areas that I needed some distinction making around so that I can go forward with a support group, with some people, with you guys, with the people I knew I trusted and cared for and stuff like that. And had the ability to, track my own progress through my interactions with people and getting that feedback over time that like, oh, your persona has changed. You're a lighter, or you have a different energy, or you're trying new things that you didn't do before. And I recognize that kind of thing.
Yeah, you effectively said it, but I want to land the point to your question. What do you do from there? And I think you've gone through this process, and thank you, by the way, for being willing to share the things that you're working on.
Yeah.
I actually very much appreciate that, because I think it helps it land for people, and you're willing to be sort of the guinea pig. I think I would offer more. I just don't remember in these moments. Like my introverted thinking.
Well, you're
is so
perfect, Antonia. So it's hard to really think of things. I'm just kidding.
It's a curse.
And I've
when you
had a
think
lot
about
of
it.
heavy stuff, and
Yeah.
I don't want to
Yeah.
bring the heavy stuff back.
I don't mind.
But-
I don't mind kind of representing somebody listening or watching that's kind of trying to make this real for themselves. Because I've always listened to stuff that gets abstract. I'm like, how do I make this my
Yeah.
own? So I'm trying to almost vicariously be that in this conversation.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, and I very much appreciate that. I was going to say, this is where personality type comes in, and you
Mhm.
mentioned archetypes,
Mhm.
but also just personality type. It's like, okay, so like, what can you expect out of yourself as well? I have
Mhm.
ENFP preferences. I am emotionally driven.
Yeah.
As in, like, my drives are connected to the emotions and feelings I have.
It's going to be emotional.
It's going to be emotional.
I know
So-
that.
So if I'm around somebody else who's like giving me feedback of like, that's too much, it's like, okay, is it too much, or is it their type preferences that are saying it's too much? What's going on for them? And
Well,
so
now you tell me after
Yeah.
years of work.
well,
Well,
for
man.
us, it was, do you want to stay together? Right. Like, I mean,
Yeah, start
it's
up.
like, you might have to choose somebody who's a little bit more friendly to really intense emotions all the time, like anxiety.
yeah.
And not that sounded like a threat, didn't it? And it wasn't a threat. It was just like, I don't know if I can hang here. I can't hang here every day in anxiety.
I heard you.
Yeah.
I heard you loud and clear.
But that's
A diamond shines under pressure.
yeah. So, but for me, it's, I mean, I've got my versions of it as a sexual 3. Like, I mean, how often am I in grief for like what feels like no reason at all? Like, I'm
Mhm.
just like, I'm having a terrible day, and just, I think everybody hates me, and nobody loves me. Nobody cares about me. And they only want me for, like, how many times do I go off on that dialogue?
Mhm.
And there have been times when you've reflected back, like, this is really disrespectful to me.
Mhm.
Right. Like, this is disrespectful to our relationship, that you think that you have no value to me other than, what you can, like, how I can use you.
Yeah.
And that's a very Enneagram 3 fear. Is like, if I'm not providing constant and perpetual value, then I'm not as an individual valued. And so therefore, if somebody partners with me, it must mean that they're trying to get something out of me all the time.
Yeah.
And Joel's just like, he'll reflect back to me. It's like, that's like an incredibly hurtful thing to say.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so it's my job to go, okay, yeah, you're right. And so what's going on for me? And then I go through my spins, right? I go through all of my like stuff. So, but type helps. Enneagram, knowing I'm
does.
a sexual 3,
Mhm.
it's not like, it helps me not believe what I'm thinking.
Right.
Right. It just goes, this might just be some pre-wiring, or this
Mhm.
might be a collection of my type preferences and my life experiences.
Mhm.
And so this thought's just there, and it just keeps popping up.
Right.
And if it kept popping up, I might, in other circumstances, believe it
Right.
and go, well, it keeps surfacing because it must be true.
Right.
I'm like, no, it keeps surfacing because that's how I'm pre-wired,
Right.
and it's bullshit, but I got to do something about it. Right.
Right.
So, so I think, on the how, that's why models are so helpful.
Yeah.
And then to go all the way back to growing up, though. Do you want to understand it, or do you want to fix it?
Mhm.
Right. And so I think models help understand it, but they're diagnostic tools, and you've got to get to prescription. So you receive feedback, you accept, you go into owning, right?
Mhm.
You use models and tools. And I mean, there's a million tools. People who are listening to this podcast probably like type tools, right? Like type
Mhm.
models and that kind of thing. But there's tons of tools that have nothing to do with this, right? There's all sorts of tools for owning your stuff. You can go therapy, counseling, like you said, mentorship, coaching.
Yeah.
You can do your own diagnostics, or things like dream analysis or whatever, pulling on your own intuition.
Mhm.
But I one time heard that it doesn't matter what your face regime is, like as a woman or as a man. It doesn't matter what your
You have a face regime.
yeah, like at night.
I put on a new one every day.
I know. Yes.
Like at night when you wash your face. Anyway, I read, and
I'm the
this is for
hero with
everybody.
1,000 faces.
This
I
is
have
for 100 people.
glasses. That's my face regime.
Well,
Regimen.
I read, Christian, and I read, Joel, that it doesn't matter what it is. It's just that you have one.
Oh, okay.
And to take care of your skin if that is of concern to you in
Yes.
your old age, right?
Mhm.
So,
How old do you
it's
think we are?
when you get
Oh,
old.
okay.
Can your introverted thinking 7th function trickster just calm down for a second, Joel? So anyway, but I know that about you, and I accept.
See, personality types. See how they come into play
That's
here?
right.
Uh-huh.
To prove
Exactly.
I was just trying to help you illustrate. That's all.
I'm
But
gonna
that
go-
was a really good example of
I'm gonna go
accepting
ahead.
him in his moment, because that's just a thing that you're doing.
You got it. Exactly. That's how you roll. And I understand that. And I'm going to land the point. So the point of that is it doesn't matter what tool you use. It just matters that you're using a tool, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't matter which one you go with. It just matters that you're doing it.
Mhm.
And then instead of just perpetually understanding, you get to you pull the trigger on solving, and then you loop back into growth,
Mhm.
right? So it's like the
Yeah.
grow up,
Wake up.
clean
Clean
up, you're going to see yourself continually and perpetually going back to grow up.
Yeah.
Because that's the foundation of everything. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for allowing me to complete that thought.
I don't know why we were messing with her so much.
I don't know, but that was joyful.
That was great.
I mean, all of that leads to acceptance. I think often when people are going through cleanup work or going through a big chunk of cleanup work, the other side is acceptance.
Yeah.
It's acceptance that like, I've got these emergency safety valves and they're not going anywhere, but there's something that exists, or my partner has those and they exist. And, you know, there's this like true emotion that I'm feeling, that I'm maybe afraid, or I have a lot of grief, or I'm judgmental, or I'm an id person and I have an id experience, an ego experience that, you know, I can ultimately accept that.
Mhm.
And then going through that acceptance process, it kind of starts to lead us into the show up work, which is really accepting
Mhm.
that we are a part of nature and not just, you know, we didn't just pop into existence
Right.
as something that's going to destroy the earth, or that we're a bane on our partners, or our partners are a bane on us, or like everyone's out to get us.
Mm.
It's that, you know, we're all a part of nature, and we all have this like unique capability to show up and contribute and be a presence through doing all of this work leading up to this point.
Except for the two of you who are clearly out to get me.
Yeah.
That said,
Sure.
I'm not well resourced enough to be in my best self. I'm in the Antonia Dodge poking,
Right. That's
causing
right.
problems version
She
of myself.
appears to have a mark on her. We should probably go figure out what that is. That's a good segue, though, I think, to show up,
Yeah.
which is the final episode in
Yeah,
this
next week.
series.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. So I just want to review again then the process, the skill process loosely.
Yeah.
Get triggered or be aware of something.
Mm-hmm.
Receive that. I had acceptance earlier, but I think you had said acceptance is really at the end of it all. I think, oh, that made sense. So I scratched it out and put it, you know, receive the fact that, okay, I need to work on this thing, or it's
Mhm.
something. Create some type of a feedback or measurement system so I know how well I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
We have to be mindful that we need to redirect or replace energy. So if I'm removing something or I'm adding something, there are going to be vacuums created, and I need to make sure that I'm not just removing something and leaving this hole. We have to replace it with something else, or we're going to have things go off the rails.
Mm-hmm.
Then we tune into tools, frameworks, models, things we can use to help support us, the scaffolding that can help us support this change.
Mm-hmm.
There might be other people too, community,
Mm-hmm.
like
yeah,
accountability, like
Yeah.
whatever, like it might be an actual like model or tool, but also might be people's involvement with us as like a mechanism, like accountability, like a person holding us accountable.
Yeah.
yeah. Our friend Jonathan
Yeah.
says we're not supposed to do it alone.
Yeah.
We're supposed to do it together.
Yeah.
And then at the very end, it's acceptance. So I think there's the recipe for this cleanup process
Mm-hmm.
that we think in terms of our shadow, our ego, and our shadow in tandem. Well, our persona and shadow in tandem with the ego is that junction box in the middle, kind of helping be the judge or the arbiter of all of it.
Yeah.
There's this opportunity now for us to like tune in and start that cleanup process, which puts us on good substrate, good footing, a platform to do what we're going to talk about in the next episode.
Yeah.
Showing up. When we say show up, give us a tiny little preview, because it'll be, you know, a week away for somebody that's listening in real time.
Little
Yeah.
snippet.
Well, I think we've already solved the world's problems in this
Oh, okay.
episode.
We
so
don't
I don't
need
think
to-
we need to do anymore.
Yeah.
No, I mean, show up is the emergence of it all. It's like what we talked about many episodes ago at this point, this idea that we keep trying to purposely create what showing up for us looks like, our ultimate purpose, or trying to create some sort of long-term goal
Mhm.
for ourselves. When ultimately, if we're doing this cleanup work, this wake up work, and this growth work on a consistent basis and going through these cycles, you know, going through the car wash, so to speak, that the emergence is determining and figuring out and seeing and witnessing our own contributions start to emerge, like the presence that we bring to varying contexts and situations, right? So it's where many worldviews up to this point, or many experiences up to this point, are really adamant on telling people how to live their lives, because it's a lot about projections,
Yeah.
or we're taking in narratives of how people are trying to tell us to live our lives. This is a space where we start to get into show, don't tell.
Yeah.
This is like you're starting to demonstrate what it means to have a calm nervous system, to show up at the right moment, to be able to get into a rhythm and regimen that when you have to show up on stage, or to show up to whatever your calling or your purpose is, like, you know, all of the material, or you know, all of the work it takes to get to that point. Right. It's not that, again, you're not now a permanent show up state. You have all of the tools, all of the skills to continue to do cleanup work, to continue to do wake up work, to continue to do to grow up work, and get yourself resourced properly to be able to show up regularly. So we're going to talk more about that.
Yeah, on the next episode. In the meantime, how is this idea of cleaning up resonating with you? You've been listening along, watching. What are your thoughts? Come over to personalityhacker.com directly below this episode. Leave a comment, ask a question, more importantly, share your story. Do you have a cleanup process in your life? Have you gone through this awakening or awareness and you're like, oh man, I got to work on this. And maybe you're in the midst of it. Maybe you're just starting out on it. Maybe you finished something and you're on to the next one. You could talk about what that process was like for you. Are there some steps here that you've discovered outside of these ones that we talked about? Again, we want to hear from you. You're the fourth person in this conversation, but you haven't had a microphone. So come over and make your voice heard over at personalityhacker.com.
And if you enjoyed this podcast, you can subscribe to us on iTunes and various Android platforms. If you leave us a rating and review on iTunes, it helps us out a lot. You may be watching right now on YouTube because we have a video version of this podcast that if you're part of our Quest program, we will be talking about right after this episode. So welcome all of you Questers, and we'll be talking to you in just a moment. If you would like to join Quest so that you not only get to discuss the podcast topic, gain the most insight out of it, have conversations with other people, but also have ways to apply it practically in your life. So you do not just understand your challenges, but you also solve them. Head over to personalityhacker.com/quest and become a part of the membership. We would love to have you with us. We also have a book. It's called Personality Hacker. You can get it at all major book retailers. And if you leave us a rating review on Amazon or on Goodreads, that also helps us out a lot.
My name is Joel Mark Witt.
My name is Christian Rivera.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
And we'll talk with you on the next Personality Hacker podcast.